Waku, thank you very much to accept our interview as
Hey,
Hostess
thank you for the
Justice
opportunity.
Group. Thank you very much. The first time we met each other was you volunteered our effort to study group of the Hostess Justice at the Parliament, and you came over, and your work was really good. And that
Thank
was
you.
the first time, wasn't it?
Yes, that was the first time we met, and it was greatly honored to meet such a distinguished group.
And our aim at that point, still now, is that to appeal to the English-speaking medias, because Japanese medias are somehow restricted in reporting. To start, could you describe your journey to Japan first, please?
My journey to Japan,
Yes.
like a lot of Americans, I'd finished college, finished grad school, and before settling into a life of drudgery, I thought I would backpack my way around the world. But I didn't have any money, and I had an introduction to an English school in Japan. So I came to Japan in September 1978 with the idea of teaching English for about 6 months to save some money to continue my trip. And I never moved on. I got stuck here. I think the thing I first fell in love with here was not Japan, but rather Tokyo. I fell in love with Tokyo, and I'm still in love with Tokyo.
Great.
Every day is exciting just being in Tokyo. As far as Shukkei Tokudo, we often speak of taking Buddhist vows, and I took Buddhist vows several years ago. But my friends kid me that my intake of alcohol has not diminished since then for some reason. Maybe it's a part of the bargain.
How would you describe hostage justice in Japan?
We talk about pretrial detention sometimes as a convenient phrase. It's not very accurate in terms of what we're speaking of here as hostage justice, because the detention continues into the trial. It's pretrial detention and detention that continues after the trial has begun. That the police can hold a suspect for up to 3 days while they're awaiting indictment. Then after the prosecutors have decided to bring charges, they can extend the detention for 10 days, and they can get a second 10-day extension. So somebody who's arrested basically is in the hands of the prosecutors for 23 days. This is contrary what in the United States and the United Kingdom and most of the West we call habeas corpus. Give us the body. Bring a charge or turn the person loose. But they don't have that principle here. They pay lip service to it, but they don't abide by that principle here. And then after the suspect has been indicted, he faces or she faces the prospect of a detention at the hands of prosecutors who can interrogate the suspect daily without the defense attorney being present. In Japan, the defense attorney is not present when the defendant is undergoing the daily interrogation by the prosecutors. Now, Tadashi,
Yes.
if I could keep you under those circumstances, I guarantee you, I could make you confess to assassinating Abraham Lincoln. I could do that, and you would do it, and you know you would, because I would say things like this. We haven't let you sleep for a week, of course, but your case is hopeless. You're going to prison one way or another. But what about that lovely daughter? Don't you care about her? Don't you care about your wife? Look, confess now, and we'll make sure that the suffering is minimal for them, and we'll get the shorter sentence for you. But if you don't confess, I guarantee you, you're going to get a maximal sentence. And to be honest, Tadaishi, I cannot guarantee, I can't say that your wife and daughter will be all right. Here's this paper and here's this pen. Don't you want to confess right now? Look, it has nothing to do with what you really did. It's what, it's what you're facing. And most suspects that are in those circumstances end up confessing, even if they didn't commit the crime. That's hostage justice.
This is, something really hard to believe, what's going on in Japan. I was a parliamentarian and I didn't know that, okay? And we thought Japan has a mature democracy. Can you describe a little bit further in relation with the 966 days Mr. Yoko was detained?
966. The prosecutors kept him in detention for 966 days before he had received a verdict. Yoko-san was working for Japan's largest brokerage, Nomura Securities. He was an all-star salesman at Nomura. While he was at Nomura, he did a lot of work for Olympus. Olympus is familiar to a lot of people as a camera manufacturer. Let's put this in perspective, though. Its larger business is producing gastrointestinal endoscopes. It's the world's largest manufacturer of gastrointestinal endoscopes. And Yoko-san worked for them while he was at Nomura, and he continued working for them after he left Nomura and set up his own consultancy. One of the things that Yoko-san did for Olympus was manage a venture capital fund. Olympus was concerned about securing future sources of revenue and earnings. They wanted to diversify their operating portfolio. And they enlisted Yoko-san to identify some promising companies to invest in. And he did that. What he did not know was that Olympus was engaged in massive accounting fraud. He had no idea. Now, Olympus used various measures to disguise the fraud. And one of the measures involved using some of the companies that Yoko-san had cultivated for them through his venture capital fund that he was managing for Olympus. They used, I'm not going to go into the accounting details of what they did, but just suffice it to say that they used 3 of the companies that he had cultivated as investments to hide losses that they wanted to disguise. When Olympus's fraud was exposed, the prosecutors arrested 3 executives at Olympus for perpetrating the fraud, and they arrested Yoko-san for assisting with that. They arrested him as an accomplice. The 3 executives at Olympus that were arrested confessed to the crime, and they received suspended sentences. Yoko-san asserted his innocence to the end. He received a 4-year prison term. Now, this followed a trial in which there were egregious examples of witness coaching by the prosecutors. There is strong evidence of evidence tampering. More than anything, there's the 966 days of detention that he endured after his arrest and well into the trial. When we talk about detention in Japan, we're talking about a defendant who's being kept in a cell and interrogated daily by the prosecutors, as I mentioned, without a defense attorney present. We're talking about a defendant who is being kept away from his or her family. There is no family visitation. They can't even exchange letters with their family. Yoko's mother was aging. During his 966 days, after well over a year in detention, the prosecutors finally allowed her to have a couple of visits, his aging mother. But as a rule, he had no family visits, and people in his circumstances have no family visits. For his first couple of months in detention, he had no toilet privacy. The toilet was exposed in the room. It's a one-way mirror visible to anyone walking by in the hallway. Only after he'd been in detention for a few months did he finally get a rudimentary screen for some modicum of privacy when doing his business at the toilet. That's a short version of what hostage justice is all about.
So this 966 days he was detained as a hostage.
Yes.
Because he refused to sign the false confessions. And as opposed to that, Olympus directors, including the president, they signed such a confession composed by the prosecutors, and they had much better treatment by the prosecutors. Is that right?
They got out immediately. They didn't have extended detentions, and they received suspended sentences.